Hi, Todd Swart here. Just getting started on a new painting. It's a scene that I found at a local farmer's market here in Pasadena. And I'm kind of excited to get started on this one. So yeah, let me show you what it looks like. Alright, so we've got a really nice little scene here. I've just sketched it out. I've got the mother here, and I've got two kids here in the corner, and then this one kid here, and I don't know, he's playing air guitar or he's shooting a gun or doing something. But mom's looking down at the kid because he's being a little weird. And so I think it's a really fun little scene. There's a lot going on. It's a farmer's market in the background. So we've got some shoppers back here. This guy carrying some bags walking away. There's a big fruit bin right here, and then some trucks and other stuff in the background. So there's a lot going on. It was kind of a complex scene. So I started with the sketch and a drawing of all those characters to make sure I get everything in place. And I think this is going to be a fun project. So I've been looking at this piece for a little bit now, and I've kind of been going through a debate about where to get started. That's actually kind of a common thought process to go through at the beginning of a lot of paintings, like just where to start. And I think in general it's good to start with dark tones to establish the dark shapes, and that would be especially under the awning here, and maybe some of the background, and then pieces of the hair, and a few other places. But also establishing the big shapes. So that's the ground here, the shapes of light and the shapes of shadow. Those different ground shapes as you go back. Both the tone and the temperature of those shapes are going to be really important. So this is the light area here, that's sunlight hitting the ground, and then this is a shadow being cast from something off on the right. And so I'll want to be going warm in the sunlight areas and cooler in the shadows. So I think I'll need to establish that first, and then maybe a suggestion of the backgrounds and definitely those dark tones to get those established. And we'll see how it goes from there. I've blocked in some of those bigger shapes of light and dark tone, and I really like how the effect now, even at this early stage in the painting, really kind of draws your attention down to this little kid, which is perfect because he's going to be the center, the focal point of the painting. I also think it's important in a scene like this to establish the background, because it really helps to establish the scene. Just having these awnings and a little suggestion of the fruit stands really kind of helps give a sense of place, which I think is important. I wanted to point out one thing. This is a mistake I tend to make a lot, actually. That's I put in the paint too thick too soon. And I did that especially in these ground areas, those big shadows. I just put the paint in way too thick. And I don't know if you can see here what I did actually. I went back in and wiped out a lot of that thick paint with a paper towel. And some of the other areas, like up here, I put it in thinner at the very beginning, and I think that works a lot better. I'll go back in later and put in thicker paint later on in the process, but in the early stage, I think it's best to keep the paint thin. Got this scene pretty well blocked in. At this stage in the painting, I always like to stop and kind of reassess. Take a look at how everything works. Is the painting, holding up? Does the whole thing work? And with this one, I think it's working pretty well. You can obviously tell that it's the The overall mood of the scene, it's set at like an outdoor shoppers market or a farmer's market. It's kind of busy with lots of shoppers around. And the focus of the scene is this family, this mother with the 3 kids, with kind of the main center of interest, your main attention being drawn to this kid, which is exactly the effect I want. So I think overall it's working pretty well. Obviously, a lot of the individual parts need a lot of work. These people back here are very roughly just blocked in. I really simplified the background there under the awnings. So I want to add more interest back there, just kind of more stuff. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the way it is for this stage of the painting. Okay, so I've worked some on the background. I think that's working pretty well. The next stage of the painting will be, number 1, working on correcting some of the smaller shapes, like these people in the background. Basically checking the drawing, making sure that their posture is correct, like this person looks a little bit off, just making sure that all those shapes and all those the forms are correct. I'll also be spending some time going through, and there's a lot of areas like right here and around this guy's legs. There's some areas that just aren't painted yet. There's gaps around some of those forms and some of those shapes. So I got to go back through and fill those in. Once all that is complete, that'll just like I say be kind of the next stage of the painting. Then I'll sit back and kind of evaluate what to do next. Another thing that I noticed now that I look at it again, in addition to these light areas being too light, these edges, the edges of those shadows are all kind of parallel to each other. That line matches that line, matches that line, and that repetitiveness is part of the reason I think it's drawing too much attention. Is you just got those strong lines and they're all kind of matching. So I think I need to add a little bit of variety in those lines. Maybe make some angle with just a little bit different angles will help break up that repetitive pattern. Okay, so I darkened up those sunlit patches and I corrected some of those angles. And I think it works a little better now, but it's still got some issues. Number 1, they're still too monochrome. Each one of these large spaces here, there's no changes. I warmed them up a bit, but I think I may have warmed them a little too much, so I want to add some cool patches and add some changes in there so they're not so, like I say, not so monochromatic. And number 2, I need to get some atmospheric perspective in this. I need to, with light areas, with shadow areas, shadows get lighter as you go back and they get bluer as you go back. But with the light areas, it's the reverse. They get darker as you go back, or they should, and they get a little bit redder. And so I think I went a little too dark in this foreground, so I want to lighten this. And then as you step back, each of those patches of sunlit area will get progressively a little bit darker and a little bit grayer, or a little bit redder rather. I'm looking at the ground and I'm still not 100% happy with it. I don't like these big shapes of shadow that just kind of jut right across the canvas like that. So what I think I'm going to do is actually extend the shadows so to kind of connect them on this side. Maybe have part of the shadow come in this way, some have this shadow come out this way, just so that there's a little bit of continuity. So I don't have this big triangular shape here and then this big shape here. I'll just merge that into kind of more one continuous shape. Okay, so I made some changes to the foreground, and I like the fact that it's more broken up now, that there's some variety of shapes, and that these shadows are connected. I've discovered or ran into a couple of additional problems, and this often happens when I make changes, is that you change one thing and then you realize that in the process you've created another problem. Or in this case, I've discovered a problem, one big problem that I didn't even notice before, and that is that this shape from here to here is basically the same as the distance from here to here. If I do my measurement with my brush, that distance is almost identical to that distance, and that's not good to have two spacings like that in a painting that are identical. So I need to change one or more of those lines. The question is, which one do I change? I could move this one up, I could move this one either up or down, or I could move this one again either up or down. And in this case, since this kid is going to be the focus of the painting, I think what I'm going to do is take this line here and move it up so that I'll have some additional contrast there on the kid's face. And it'll also reduce a little bit the contrast here in this guy's leg, because I'll add some lighter area to that ground surface back there and reduce that contrast. So hopefully that'll help bring even more attention to the kid. Another issue I came across was I painted in these little angles down here, and I noticed that on the back side of her leg I now have two little triangles that are kind of repeating shapes, and I don't like that. And so I think what I'm going to do here is just extend this dark shape out, and that'll also help connect the mother with her kids by having that dark shape that connects them. And the last thing I noticed was that I don't like how this shape here is kind of in a similar line with the end of that shape right there. I think I want to move that just up a little bit so it'll hit around there, just so it's not so similar. So a minor thing, but those shapes and those especially making sure that there's no repeating shapes and the different shapes aren't the same size are really an important component. Alright, so I think I'm ready to call this one done. It's been a fun piece. It's been a bit of a challenge, but I've enjoyed working on it. It's always fun to work on scenes that just capture people in spontaneous moments. That's one of the things I enjoy about both my street photography and about painting. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.